Welcome back to another session with Brian Wolfe, who's the Director of Ability Ministries. And we've now come to our third segment in the CSRM podcast series with Ryan. And Ryan, in our first segment, shared a little bit about what Challenger baseball looked like, how to even talk to folks that might have a need for that kind of league. And in the second segment, we got a little bit more about how that happens and then how it starts to impact lives, how it begins to impact the very DNA of the church. So, Brian, again, thanks for joining us and being willing to take time of your Corona experience of being all sheltered and joining us here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
And our picture or our sound gets a little fuzzy or fades away. It's because we are in the Corona era, and we are not face-to-face. We're not in our normal studio, and so bear with us. We think that you're going to love it no matter how fuzzy it is. And some of you are saying, can't that fuzz come on your face, Greg, a little bit more? That would be helpful to us. But you know what? Just stick with us because the message is so important. Again, we're talking about how a local church, sports, rec, and fitness ministry can envision, plan for, and then begin to organize and administrate and implement an outreach that touches some very special lives. We talked about these lives may be people that are on the autism spectrum. They may have some sort of social or emotional or physical situation that they need a little more special kind of a lead and setting. And in our first segment, we said, please don't be offended by any terms used, right? And we're still learning how to talk about this stuff. But Ryan, last when you talked to us a little bit about how the league began to impact the very DNA of the church, and you gave us some things like prom and workforce and different things. Explain that a little bit more. What was the next step after the league? What began to happen at your church?
Yeah, so much of what we did was a result of asking a question to leaders in our community. We didn't go out with a master plan of how we were going to conquer the county, for Christ. We went out with a simple question, and it was this: how can we be a blessing, no strings attached? And we would ask that question to different people. That's how we got kind of involved in the baseball league. That's how we ended up eventually building a baseball field on our campus. And we began to, have more meetings with more community leaders. The superintendent of our county's Board of Developmental Disabilities, we met with him several times, and he began to lay out some different things that the county needed help with. So I remember the newspaper showed up at our field dedication, and the reporter that was doing the article said, "Hey, what's First Christian Church going to do next?" Kind of that thing. And I kind of going through the mental Rolodex of conversations that I had with other leaders in our disability community, and one of them went back to the conversation I had with Bill Green, the Stark County Superintendent of the Board of Developmental Disabilities. And he said, Ryan, we have, something like 60 plus adults in our community that don't have a guardian. Their loved ones have all passed away. They have no one to speak up for them, to help them, to make sure that they're safe, not being abused, neglected wherever they're living. He said, man, I bet your church could really help us with that. So I'm being interviewed by the newspaper at the field dedication, and the lady asked me, what are you going to do next? And I said, you know what? I heard about this guardian waiting list for adults with disabilities that have no one to speak up for them. And I said, you know what? I think we're going to tackle that next. And that hit the paper, and no more than like a day or two after that hit the paper, Judge Dixie Park called me in my office at the church. So here we have, the judge in our county. She says, "Hey, Ryan, I need to talk to you. So we have the county judge calling me in my office at church saying, I need you to come to my office. So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, did I do something wrong? And she said, you mentioned you wanted to wipe out the guardian waiting list. She said, I want to help you with that. So here I am sitting in the judge's office with the superintendent of Stark DD, and we're coming up with this plan on how to recruit people from the church to wipe out the guardian waiting list. And it happened as a result of newspaper article from the field dedication that we, when we built the baseball field. And this, the baseball field ended up getting like national recognition. It was on like NPR radio. It was all over the place. So we're getting phone calls from all over the place about, just what we did for our disability community. Ended up tackling the guardian waiting list. And then we continue to ask that question, well, what can we do next to be a blessing to our community? And that was soon after that, we had the prom at our church. We've done 10 proms since, like one a year. Since then, we kept asking the question, how can we be a blessing? And that's when Bill Green, the superintendent of Stark DD, again said, hey, all the workshops are closing down. This is happening nationwide. Sheltered workshops are now no longer viewed as something that's good because people are not in the community. He said, our community needs a religious, a faith-based day program. He said, would your church consider that? And I'm like, absolutely, we'd consider that. And, that was another one of those kind of dominoes that fell as we continued to ask the question, how can we be a blessing? No strings attached. Again, with no agenda, with no master plan for it, just trying to ask the question and respond with the need, meeting the need in the community. And it was soon after that, we worked really hard to open up an adult day program for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities. Shortly after that, the employment program came. Now at First Christian Church, we've got almost 100 adults with intellectual developmental disabilities that come every single day to the church for either the day program or the employment side of that program. Obviously, with the coronavirus right now, they're not coming. But once that goes away, we'll have, again, Monday through Friday, 100 adults from our community coming to our church for day programming and for employment opportunities. So those are just a few of the things that developed, all as a result of us being willing to step outside the box of the church walls, outside of Sunday morning, and to go meet a need in the community. And God really opened all those other doors, and it was just a matter of us, stepping through those as He opened those doors. Again, not a master plan that we had, but it was all birthed from, starting an outreach to our community through sports. So.
Now, Ryan, I was very privileged to be at a church in Wales, and they had a very similar thing. They had indoor soccer. They called it football, of course. And I believe the gentleman's name was James. James was probably 35 or 40 when I knew him, and he was a Down syndrome. I hope that's an appropriate way to define this person. Very special man. And he was the keeper, the goalkeeper. And absolutely, I watched for an hour. He stopped every single ball that was headed toward the goal that the other team shot in. And then he politely kicked it in for him. And it was just one of these things that you just had to sit there and just smile at God's wonderful heart inside of James. And that church ended up getting 3 grants that I believe totaled over £1.5 million from the British government because they were so influential in meeting the needs of this group of people. And I met one particular caretaker of one of the folks at the faith, and he said what you shared in our last segment about how it's for my person. In that case, if you thought that was good, he said, I'll even come and listen to a sermon. I think we're on to something here. God has obviously used you and moved through this to impact you. Tell us where you're at today. You oversee an entire ministry, and you're still affiliated with the church, right? Just tell us how you went from one to the next and what's happened.
Yeah, so right now I am the president and executive director at Ability Ministry. We are an organization that equips and empowers churches to either start or take a next step in their disability ministry and the outreach to their community. So we're a supporting organization, very much like CSRM, that helps churches do ministry. We don't do the ministry necessarily for them, but we provide the training, the tools that they need, curriculum, different things like that, so churches can actively do the outreach to their disability community. So, I still attend First Christian Church. I'm still an active member there. I volunteer in the disability ministry there, which is really cool. I spent 15 years at First Christian Church in Canton, Ohio. My last 8 years, my position was the full-time disability ministry pastor. And I learned so much over those last 8 years about kind of how to reach the community, how to be a blessing, no strings attached, and God taught me so much, and it was such a rich experience. And I really feel like our church is pretty unique amongst churches in our nation. And the burden that God put on my heart was, he said, Ryan, you've done a great job for Stark County and for First Christian Church, but I want you to look beyond that. What if you could duplicate what you've done here in churches all across the country and potentially the world? And I said, okay, God, I'll be obedient to that if you provide the opportunity, because I didn't know where to go or how to make that happen. And after I felt kind of that burden from God, it was a couple of years before the opportunity at Ability Ministry presented itself. Now I've been with Ability Ministry for 3 years, and we've been working, real hard with churches, creating content for them, doing trainings for them, trying to help them do essentially what we did at First Christian Church in Canton, Ohio. And it's been an exciting journey, and obviously we've had to pivot a little bit because obviously churches aren't meeting and in their buildings. So we've shifted all of our content development to creating things that churches can use while they're quarantined or while they're locked down or while people are at home. And we really feel like we've got a unique opportunity to help people understand how to reach the disability community that oftentimes does live a bit more isolated than the rest of the people that maybe are labeled as neurotypical or able-bodied people. So I really feel like God's got he's really poised the church to be able to be much more efficient in reaching the disability community for Christ because of this experience that we're in. So, we're trying to really help churches see things that maybe have not seen before or haven't slowed down enough to see. But this experience that we're all having right now because of the pandemic is opening our eyes to some different things, and we're praying that God uses that in a big way to help us be more efficient, once we finally emerge out of it.
Just a word on that, if you would. Is there a church that is doing this type of ministry, and you get beyond the quarantine? Is there anything that the churches need to consider doing for this group in terms of keeping that community healthy and safe? I mean, we're wearing masks, we're doing different things. Anything specific, quickly, that you think that once it reopens that we should be aware of, that community is in need of?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would caution churches of is don't go back to life as usual. Don't go back and just say, "Oh, I'm glad that's over with." Now we can go back to doing everything the way we've always done it. It's my prayer that the churches will understand that this reality that we were forced into is a reality that a lot of people live in. You know, there are a lot of families that have a child with a disability that can't go to church because they don't have a church that's accepting or welcoming of them. And what happens a lot of times for these families, if they go to church at all, one parent will go 1 week while the other parent stays at home with their child with a disability. And then the next week, the next parent goes. And they're never together fully because they're kind of forced into this isolated type of living because of disability, because the church is not being equipped. So I guess my advice would be, don't forget the feeling of isolation. Just because you're out of it doesn't mean that everyone in your community is out of it. And the church can play such a key role into bringing hope to people who are forced into isolation or isolated types of living because of disabilities and because of autoimmune deficiencies and things that people live with every day of their lives.
Excellent. And as we're kind of winding down here, if you're on a flight, the pilot would say, get back in your seat, fasten your seatbelt, put the tray table up, we're going to be landing shortly. I'm wondering, Brian, if you could give a last, in just a moment, just kind of any last proposals that you might advise a local congregation if they wanted to start doing this. What should they do? If those of you that are tuned into this know that there were 2 previous podcasts with Brian that helped break this down, break this out. And so please make sure that you go back, watch or listen to those. And know that we have a special partnership and relationship with Ability Ministry, CSRM does. And we're even hoping that Brian and his folks will be at the next Reach gathering to come and present a track on this. Because we've identified this as something that we think that the churches are really being called to. And that this is a positive and great, a strategic and relevant, and also an efficient and effective way to go and do gospel ministry. And so just know that if for whatever reason you missed on the screen that came up, if you're not watching this, how to get in touch, you can go to the CSRM website, you can contact us directly, and we'll put you in contact with our partner, Ability Ministries, Brian Wolfe. But Brian, for the last couple of minutes, what proposal, how should churches begin to envision this, plan for this, begin to organize this?
Yeah, just to kind of wrap it all up, disability ministry and outreach to the disability community isn't a cookie cutter type of thing. Every church, every community is a little bit different. The makeup's a little bit different. So we really encourage churches, to research who is in their community, who is in their congregation, to meet the needs that they have first within their congregation and then reach out to the community. We actually do free consultation with any church that reaches out to us to help them come up with an individualized plan on how to most effectively reach their disability community for Christ. And we're really passionate about it. That's why we do consultation for free. You can find us at abilityministry.com. You can find us on social media at Ability Ministry, so it's really easy to find us. Or like Greg said, you can find us through CSRM. One of the approaches that churches might do, it might be through sports outreach, and that's just one of many different ways that churches can meet needs and establish relationships in their community. But there are a plethora of different other ways that they can do that, based on the makeup of who's in their community, what organizations already exist. And we like to kind of walk hand in hand with churches and to help them come up with an individualized plan. And again, we do that consultation for free with churches. But yeah, I just encourage people, reach out to us, and we'd love to help you with that. We have tons of resources that we make available to churches, just like CSRM. it creates a lot of great content for churches to use. We're very much built in the same way, where we create content for churches to do the ministry, and we equip and empower churches through training and resources.
Well, you've heard it, folks. They're there for you, so that you can be there for others. And this is an empowering, enabling, encouraging ministry that can help your local church fulfill your Great Commission goals and objectives in this way. So we can't say enough about Brian and the ministry. We can't give it enough publicity because we just believe that what you're doing, Brian, who you are, that's the entire ministry is about. So as we kind of wrap this one up, again, I want to remind you, go back to the other couple. We've got 3 in this series that are all part of how a local church can do ability ministry with those that have some very special gifts and some special needs. And again, using that sport, recreation, fitness that leads to all the relationships, that leads to lots of openness. And so, again, if you're listening to this and haven't been able to see the graphics, get to the CSRM website, connected to there, or contact us directly. Brian, once again, your website, give us that.
Yes, it's abilityministry.com. So super easy to find us. Social media is all at Ability Ministry. So again, super easy to find us.
And it's ABILITY Ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And is ministry plural or singular?
Singular, ministry.
Okay. All right, so folks, there you have it. AbilityMinistries.org, right?
.com.
.com. That's
.com. .com.
Yep. So make sure that you do get information. Brian, thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Greg, for having me. I appreciate it.
And you know, it's going to be your future, and I hope it's a long time, that when you cross that Jordan River, there's going to be a lot of people of what you and the church and the
well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks for joining this segment of the CSRM podcast with Brian Wolfe. God bless you.